Good morning. Now, looking around the room, I can tell that some people are a little nervous, a little scared, a little apprehensive. So I'm going to get this out of the way right from the get-go. Yeah, I'm a millennial. How many people here got good grades in high school and college? Oh, wow. A bunch of smart people in here. When I went to high school, my GPA was a 2.89. We're going to talk later. Now, I should preface this by saying that my family is Russian, like former USSR hardcore Russian. Now, there are a couple of things to know about Russian families. One, they eat meat at every meal. And the second, there you go. And the second is that a 2.89 doesn't do well in a Russian household. I remember when my mom was looking at my report card, she would just stare at it and go, and my dad would look at it, and he would have a very different reaction. He'd look at my report card, look at me, and in his heavy Russian accent say, "What are you, stupid? You want to go to clown college?" Thankfully, I didn't go to a clown college, but I decided to buckle down and try harder. So I went to community college after high school. Thank you. You guys are great. I love this. In community college, I decided to work a little bit harder. I improved my 2.89 GPA to a 2.9. So slowly moving up in the world. After community college, I went to the University of California, Santa Cruz. Couple banana slugs? There we go. Now, at the University of California, Santa Cruz, I double majored in business management, economics, and psychology. I ended up graduating with honors. I worked really, really hard, and I was excited to join the corporate world. In fact, I thought that my career path was going to be college, go get a job somewhere, go back to school, get an MBA, and then go back to an organization and ascend the corporate ranks. That did not happen, not even close. So instead what happened is, after I graduated college, I went to go work for a technology company in Los Angeles. And when I was interviewing for this company, they were telling me, "Jacob, you're going to be doing all these really amazing things here. You're going to be traveling, you're going to be doing business development work, you're going to be meeting entrepreneurs and executives, you're going to love it." And I thought, perfect. This is exactly why I've been working so hard in college. A couple months into my job, I'm doing data entry, cold calling, PowerPoint presentations. One day, the CEO comes out of his nice office, steps out of his corner, beautiful corner office, and he comes over to me and he says, "Jacob, come here, I got something really important I need you to do." And I thought, oh, this is it, this is my moment. He takes out his wallet, he hands me a $10 bill, and he says, "I have a really important meeting coming up. I don't have time to go get coffee. Can you go get me a cup of coffee? And by the way, get something for yourself." What are you, out of your damn mind? This is why I've been working so hard in school, is to go get you a cup of coffee. You schmuck, you go get it yourself, is what I said on the inside. On the outside, I said, "Sure, I'd be happy to go get you a cup of coffee." And shortly after that, I ended up leaving that company. And ever since then, I've become fascinated with the future of work. How is the workplace changing? How are employee experiences being shaped? What are some of the world's most forward-thinking companies doing and thinking about? And how are they designing and creating these experiences? And so part of my job is to go inside of these organizations. I interview executives in podcasts, I put them on video, I speak at events like this, and I get to go and see firsthand what these organizations are doing and what they're thinking about. And I love to share a lot of that information publicly with the world. And some of that I want to share with you today. Now, I want to preface this by saying that what I want to share with you isn't just my ideas or things that I'm making up or fun stuff like that. this is stuff that some of the world's most forward-thinking organizations around the world are actually telling me that they are doing and thinking about. I run something called the Future of Work Community, which is a global brand council of some of these organizations. We meet twice a year. They have an online community where they interact and they share, and they tell me what they're stressed out about, what they're thinking about, what they're trying to do, what their challenges are. And so some of that is what I want to share with you today. Now, before we start talking about employee experience, we first have to start off with understanding what is experience. So quick show of hands. In the past year, how many people here have spent money on some kind of an experience or indulgence? A cruise, a fancy restaurant, a car, something. OK, pretty much everybody. Now keep your hands up. How many of you have also spent money on this type of an experience in the past 6 months? OK, pretty much every hand is still up. What about in the past 30 days? A lot of hands still up. What about in the past week? Past 24 hours? Couple hands. So it's clear to see that experience is something that we all care about. Experience is something that we all value. We spend money on experiences. We want to feel good. Now, experiences can come in many different forms and shapes and sizes. Experiences can come from ceremonies. This is a picture of my wife and I. We got married almost, it's just over a year, actually. Experiences can come from beautiful ceremonies like this. Experiences can also come from pets. This is a picture of my giant Yorkie dog, Athena. Experiences can also come from beautiful sunsets or from beautiful sunrises. And if you're like me, experiences can also come from tasty treats. I have a huge sweet tooth. So experiences can come from many, many different places. Now, if we were to think about how experiences get shaped in kind of this overall span of experiences, it would look something like this. We have an event. We have some kind of a trigger. This event is a great example. Everything that you see around you is shaping your experiences. The lights, the music, the auditorium, me as a speaker. And hopefully the experience I'm giving off is a good one and not one where you guys are thinking this guy's out of his mind. But all of these things shape our experiences. So we start off with this event, with this kind of a trigger. From there, we experience that event. From the experience, we get some kind of a feeling. A good feeling, a bad feeling, hopefully a happy feeling. And from that feeling, we get a memory, oftentimes that stays with us forever. And so this is how events map to memories. And this is why experiences are so important. Because we all want to create great memories. We all want to have great experiences. But where's the experience at work? Many organizations around the world actually struggle with trying to understand and define experiences at work. Why is that? Why is it that we value experiences so much in our personal lives? We care about them. We try to create them for ourselves all the time. But why is it that our organizations around the world are consistently struggling with delivering great experiences for our employees? Why do we consistently see reports about how many employees around the world are disengaged or not engaged in their jobs? Well, the reason is actually quite simple. Work used to be about utility. Right? Work used to be about running a factory. Work used to be about linear process. Everybody shows up on time, everybody wears the same thing, everybody has access to the same technologies, everybody sits in the same type of cubicle, everybody reports to the same type of person, we all leave at the same day, right? Everything is very linear and process-centric. Organizations didn't care about engagement and inspiration and empowerment and health and well-being and all these different types of things that we're talking about today. There was no need for it. Nobody cared. That's not how our organizations were built. We were built on the very premise that work is about utility. You have a desk, you have a phone, that's it. That's all you need. That's all you need to get your job done. And it's a very outdated way of thinking. In fact, I'll prove to you how outdated it really is. So when I was doing research for my book on the future of work, I thought it would be very interesting to look at some synonyms and some words that we use to describe work today. And I wanted to look up, what is a manager? What is an employee? And what is actually work? So what I'm going to share with you are actual definitions and synonyms that you will find from the dictionary. Let's start off with the word manager. Now what you see on the bottom, orange, synonyms from the dictionary. I didn't make this up. Synonyms for the word manager: slave driver, boss, zookeeper. Again, I didn't make this up. This is right out of the dictionary. Let's move on to the next one. Employee. And I'm sure some of you already see the direction that this is going. Synonyms for employee include cog, servant, slave. Again, taken directly out of the dictionary. This is not something that I made up. And the last one, my favorite one, is the word work. So synonyms for the word work, and I'm sure many of you have used these words: daily grind, drudgery, and struggle. Again, all from the dictionary, not something that I made up. So if you put these three things together, what does that mean? Well, basically it means that we're all cogs working for a slave driver as we go about our daily drudgery. Now, I don't know about you, but that means that work sucks, right? It makes it sound very, very unpleasant. And this is the very mentality that our organizations have been built on top of for the last 50, 100, 150 years. This is how we've built our companies, on the very notion that employees are cogs, that managers are always cracking the whip, and that work has to be about drudgery, that work has to be about struggle. This is how we fundamentally built our companies from the ground up. And I'm sure all of you would agree that this is a very outdated way of thinking about work. In fact, when we think about designing employee experiences, a lot of organizations think employee experience is just about hanging some banners somewhere or giving employees cake on their birthday. This is not employee experience. Now, I'm sure some of you are thinking, all right, Jacob, employee experience is also not about kegs and parties and all this madness that happens in the workplace. And you're absolutely right. That's not employee experience either. Having a slip and slide that goes down your cubicles and having naked people jumping around, that's not employee experience either. So if cake and banners isn't employee experience, and having parties with naked people jumping on you and slip and slides isn't employee experience, then what is employee experience? I think it starts off with a very basic shift in mentality around what work is. For the longest time, our organizations have made a huge assumption around work. And that assumption is that people need to work there. They need to show up. They need to be a part of your organization. And instead, the big shift that organizations are starting to realize they have to make is that we have to move from creating an environment where we assume that people need to show up to creating an environment where people want to show up. And that shift from need to want is what's causing organizations to move away from utility to experience. It's that very simple shift in mentality. People don't need to work here, they want to be here. And this is why organizations all around the world are investing in all sorts of interesting programs. And I'll talk about some of those in just a few minutes. Now, for those of you thinking, well, is there any business impact or benefit to this? There absolutely is. There are many research studies and reports that cite the benefits of investing in these types of things. Now, in this chart, I'm sure many people here are familiar with Glassdoor. Glassdoor is a site that allows you to get transparent information about pretty much any company that you want around the world. So if you go to Glassdoor and type in a company, you'll see reviews that other people have put up about that company. You'll see salary information. You'll see how many people like the CEO, how many people like working there. You'll see an unbelievable amount of information about this company. And it's completely open and transparent and public for the world to see. And Glassdoor did some interesting research. Every year they put out a list of best places to work. And they thought it would be interesting to compare stock price performance of companies that are on the best place to work list versus the S&P 500. And they've categorized several different types of organizations that are best places to work. And what we can see from this chart is that consistently, companies that are best places to work outperform pretty much every type of organization that exists. And there was actually a research paper that I think was just published a couple days ago by a university that verified this. So this isn't just about a nice to have. This isn't just about something that organizations can do. This is something that organizations should do. And we also should remember that employee experience also benefits the customer. Employee experience means better customer experience. So this isn't just something that we're doing for our companies. This is something that we are doing for our customers. It benefits everybody that is in that ecosystem. Now, oftentimes people ask, well, why is this shift happening? Why are we moving away from utility to experience? Why are we starting to think about this? Why are organizations all over the world investing time and effort and energy into designing these programs? For what? There are 5 trends that are shaping the future of work, which are causing this shift to happen. Every organization around the world, regardless of the industry that they're in, regardless of where they are located, every company is being impacted by these 5 trends shaping the future of work. The first one is new behaviors. If I were to find you on the streets 15 years ago and say, you know what? One day, I'm going to know everything about you. I'll know the books that you like. I'll know the people that you're connected with. I'll know your entire professional history. I'll know absolutely everything about you. You would probably think that I'm nuts. But look at the world that we live in today. We share pictures on Instagram. We put up personal information on Facebook. We put up rants and ideas and comments on Twitter. We put up reviews on Yelp. We write blog posts. We use TripAdvisor. We use all sorts of technologies. We are much more comfortable living in a public life, in a public world where information is accessible and shareable. How many people here are on Facebook? Okay, pretty much every. How many people here are on Twitter? How many people here are on Instagram? Okay, almost the entire room. If I were to ask that 10 years ago, not that many hands would go up. So this is a fascinating shift that we're seeing, where people are becoming more comfortable sharing and being public with information. So that's the first trend that we're seeing around new behaviors. The second trend is around new technologies. These are the technologies that are enabling that new type of behavior. These are technologies like big data. These are technologies like collaboration platforms, video conferencing solution, conferencing reservation systems, wearable devices like the one I have on my wrist. All of these new technologies are enabling new ways to work. And this is something that organizations have to constantly think about. The third trend that we're seeing is around the millennial workforce. Now, it's not just about millennials, though. It's about millennials and changing demographics. And what's fascinating about millennials is that by 2020, they're expected to comprise 50% of the workforce. By 2025, 75% of the workforce. Today, millennials already make up the majority of the workforce. Currently, today, the world that we live in. Now, what's really interesting about this is that there have been a lot of studies and reports and research that has been conducted which shows millennials are not these weird alien creatures coming down from another planet that are going to wreak havoc and destroy everything. I promise. Instead, what all the research seems to show is that millennials are not that different from everybody else. A recent report that I looked at was from CBRE, a global commercial real estate company. I think the report came out at the end of last year. And they found that across all the metrics that they were looking at, millennials were similar to other generations in around 75% of all the things that they were looking at. So there are a lot of similarities between millennials and other generations. In fact, I always tell organizations, if you were to get rid of every millennial that worked there, you would still have people that care about workplace flexibility, that care about having a good relationship with their manager or with their boss, that care about competitive compensation. People care about these things. They want to have a sense of purpose. This isn't just a millennial thing. This is an everybody thing. This is an employee thing. So what that tells us is that the future employee is anybody that can adjust their behavior and mindset and attitudes and values to the changes that we're seeing in the workplace. That means the future employee can be 22 or 62. It doesn't matter. It's not just about age. The fourth trend that we're seeing is around mobility. A couple of years ago, a college buddy of mine and we decided to go to China for a month. And we went to all the places that you would expect to go to. We went to Beijing, we went to Tibet, we went to Xi'an, we went to all the places that you would expect to go to in China. Now, one of the places we went to, we decided to rent bikes, go bike out into the middle of nowhere, and just see what we could find. Now, keep in mind, I live in the Bay Area in California, which many people consider to be the tech and innovation hub of the world. So we're thousands of miles away, in the middle of nowhere. We're biking. We stop. We get off our bikes. We look around. We're in the middle of gorgeous rice paddy fields and mountains. And I look around, and not too far away from me, there's a rice paddy farmer. And the rice paddy farmer is in his field doing his chores, and then he stops for a minute. He puts his hand into his pocket, and he takes out a smartphone. A smartphone. And I thought that was fascinating, because here we are, thousands of miles away from the Bay Area, in the middle of nowhere, and here's a rice paddy farmer that has access to the same people, the same technology, the same information, and the same data that I do living in the Bay Area. That's what mobility is about. It's about connecting to work. You should be able to get your job done regardless of where you are. And this is something that organizations are trying to figure out as well. The fifth and final trend that we're seeing is around globalization. Globalization is essentially this idea that we are living in a world where boundaries of any kind do not exist. The language that you speak, the currency that you transact in, where you are physically located, all of these things are starting to matter less and less and less and less. Globalization is about living in a world where boundaries of any kind are being broken. And so that brings us to this idea of the employee experience. What is it? What does it look like? Every organization around the world, it doesn't matter the industry that you're in, where you're located, the size, none of these things matter. Every organization around the world, when it comes to the employee experience, there's only three things that need to be considered. There are three environments that make up the employee experience for every company around the world. These three environments are the cultural environment, the physical environment, and the technological environment. So let's go through these a little bit and explore them. The first one is the physical environment. The physical environment is the one that you see, the one that you can breathe in, the one that you can taste, the one that you can see. It is the one that you are a part of, that you can reach out and touch. It is the cubicle that you sit in, or the office that you are in, or the open floor plan. It is the dog that shows up to the office, because you can bring your dogs to work. It is the cafeteria that you see where you can get food, or it is the vending machine that you have to go to. The physical environment is everything that you can see around you. Now, what's particularly fascinating about the physical environment is that years ago, a lot of people predicted that with the rise of technology, office spaces are going to go away. Everybody said, well, office spaces are going to disappear. Everybody's going to work from home or from a cafe or from a co-working spot. We're seeing the exact opposite. The exact opposite is true. Instead, what's happening is that offices are re-emerging. But they're re-emerging not as the standard type of office that we all know and think about. They're re-emerging as beautiful employee experience centers. Companies around the world are spending tens of millions of dollars redesigning their spaces to be beautiful, to make it so that employees feel happy when they show up. So offices aren't going away. They are re-emerging as a new breed, as a new type of office. One that gives employees a sense of pride. One where employees actually want to show up. And that's a fascinating change. The second environment that all organizations have to think about is the cultural environment. Unlike the physical environment that you can see and touch, the cultural environment is one that you feel. Cultural environment is one that you feel. This is the sense of purpose that you have when you go to the organization. This is the informal type of structure that your organization operates in. Is it a hierarchy or is it a flat, open model? These are the leadership styles. Is it based on command and control and fear or on transparency and trust? All of these things make up the cultural environment of the organization. And the third one that we have to take a look at is the technological environment. These are the tools that employees actually use to get their jobs done. These are the apps. These are the computers. This is the software. These are the user interfaces. These are the collaboration tools, the conferencing reservation systems. These are all of these things that fall into the technological environment. Oftentimes, when we hear about digital transformation, that is where digital transformation falls into this technological environment. So these are the three environments that every organization needs to think about. The physical space that your employees work in, how your employees feel and what your corporate culture looks like, and the tools and devices that your employees are actually using to get their jobs done. And I want to give you a couple examples of organizations that are doing some really fascinating things. The first one is Airbnb, which I'm sure many people here have heard of. Now, this picture is actually a picture of the Airbnb offices. I've had a chance to visit their space a few times, and they're one of the few organizations around the world that actually have an executive role responsible for designing employee experiences. A Chief Employee Experience Officer. Now, what's really fascinating about Airbnb is that they're not building these beautiful offices just for the sake of building them. They're building these offices to be a real-life physical manifestation of the culture, of the values of the organization, of their mission for people to belong anywhere. I spoke with some of the people that are responsible for designing these things at Airbnb, and they told me that they treat their physical space like software. In software, with lean or with agile methodologies, what do? We test, we experiment, we iterate, we put things out, we test, and we continuously follow this loop. This is how Airbnb thinks of the physical space. They test out ideas. They have no problem tearing down a wall that they've built up. And they have no problem building up a wall where they've torn one down. They treat their physical space like software. They test, they iterate, they experiment. And of course, Airbnb also does provide healthy snacks. I mean, they have a beautiful space. In fact, if you Google Airbnb and click on images, you'll see some of the spaces and some of the visuals of their offices. So again, they do this to design employee experiences. The second organization that I think does a fantastic job is Cisco. I recently had the opportunity to visit their offices in San Jose, and what's fascinating about Cisco is that employees there don't have desks. If you show up to Cisco, and they're rolling this across their entire offices around the world, if you show up to Cisco, you do not have an assigned desk. Instead, what happens is you show up to a desk, and all of your relevant contact information, everything is magically beamed down from the sky into the computer that you're using. Now, they do this because Cisco is a technology company. They want their offices to emulate the type of company that they are. Technology savvy, forward-thinking in the technology space. If you reserve a conference room at Cisco and you walk into that conference room, the temperature, the lighting, the mood, everything in that room adjusts to your personal preferences. Right? That's fascinating. But again, that's Cisco. And I feel like so many organizations around the world are trying to be a Google or a LinkedIn or a Facebook. But they shouldn't. Companies should try to be themselves. Right? Try to be themselves. One of the other things that Cisco is experimenting with is giving employees more than one role at the company. Why do you just have to be in marketing? Why do you just have to be in sales? Why can't you have more than one role at the company? Why can't you be within the company and bid on work? Right? These are the things that they are experimenting with and testing because they are seeing the changes that we are all experiencing in the workplace. The third company that I want to talk about is Whirlpool. Now, Whirlpool is a home appliance manufacturer. And when most people think about the future of work, they don't think about a blender. Right? They don't think about a washing machine, a refrigerator. Those aren't the first things that pop into your mind when you hear future of work, forward-thinking company. But Whirlpool is actually doing some fascinating things. They're spending millions of dollars redesigning their entire office spaces. They've created a program where any employee within the organization has the opportunity and the power to submit an idea and work through an idea to turn that into a product or a service. Any employee within the entire company 80,000 people. They've also gotten rid of all of their management roles and titles. And instead, they said everybody at our company is going to fall into one of 4 leadership categories. Everybody at the organization falls into one of 4 leadership categories. There are no management and executive titles there anymore. One of the other really fascinating things that Whirlpool did is that they switched their technology stack over from using legacy technologies to using Google, because they realized that their employees use Google in their personal lives all the time. And they want their employees to have that same experience at work. So they said, use Google in your personal life. You can also use Google at work. So when we think about this employee experience in these 3 environments, there are a couple companies that start to emerge. Obviously, not every organization around the world is focusing on all 3 things at the same time. So we start to see a little bit of overlap. There are some companies that focus on technology and culture. In other words, you have great tools to get your job done, and you have a great culture that supports you. But maybe your physical environment is, maybe you still sit in a cubicle. Maybe the physical environment doesn't reflect the type of space that you want to be in. I like to call these organizations empowered. Then we have organizations that are engaged. These are companies that have a great cultural environment. Their physical environment is beautiful, but they lag a little bit when it comes to technology. They're not using tools that help really enable and empower employees to get their jobs done. Next, we have enabled organizations. These are organizations that have a great physical space, they have great tools, but their corporate culture needs work. Their corporate culture doesn't give them that sense of feeling, a sense of purpose for why they're at that organization. Now, I'm kind of curious if you guys would be so bold enough to raise your hands. How many of you would say that you work for an empowered organization where you have great culture, great technology, but you think you can improve a little bit on the physical space? Okay? How many people here are working at an engaged organization? That is, your culture is great, you have a beautiful physical environment, but maybe you guys need to think about technology a little bit more. How many people fall into that category? Okay? And how many people fall under the enabled category? You have a great technology, you have a great physical environment, but you need to improve your corporate culture so that people feel a sense of purpose when they work there. Okay? Seems to be where most people fall. And it's interesting because I started doing something called the Future of Work Show, where I go inside of organizations to interview their employees and their executives and tour their offices. And when I speak with employees, I always ask them, what do you care about and value the most at your organization? Anybody want to take a guess what they say? What is the number one thing that you value most at your organization? Flexibility? Culture? That is what most people say. Most of the employees that I speak with and interview always say they value the culture. Nobody has ever mentioned pay. In fact, I ask employees, if you were to get a 10 or a 15% pay increase, but your corporate culture wasn't as good, would you go work there? And they all say no. Corporate culture is by far the number one thing that employees around the world are consistently telling me that they value most in an organization. And finally, we have what I like to call the experiential company. This is the organization that focuses on all 3. And this is where I think organizations are going. This is what the future of work is about. The future of work is all about designing employee experiences. Why? Because we have to be able to attract and retain top talent. We want to be able to have happier customers. We want to be able to continuously grow our businesses and to succeed and thrive as the workplace is changing. This is a massive opportunity for organizations around the world to start thinking about and investing in employee experiences. So what does this experience design framework actually look like? It's a simple process that looks like an infinity loop. In all the companies that I'm interviewing and speaking, this is how they think about their employee experiences. They start off with design. And design is typically, they will take an assumption, a common assumption around how work gets done, and they will challenge it. Maybe it's around commuting. Maybe it's around technology. Maybe it's around annual performance reviews. They will take a common assumption that hasn't been questioned or challenged at the organization, and they'll say, do we really have to do things that way? Let's test it out. Let's design a new type of an experience around a particular area. For example, workplace flexibility. Let's tell employees they no longer have to commute to the office. So we'll design that, we'll push it out to employees. Employees will then experience that. They will go through that. And they will provide feedback back to the organization. Was it effective? What did they like? What did they not like? Where's there room for improvement? The organization takes that feedback and turns it into insight. And they push the design back out again. So it's this continuous, infinite flow of transparency and going back and forth between the organization and with employees. But how do you do this? How do you do this at scale for an organization that has hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of employees? I think one of the best examples I can think of is Starbucks. Starbucks has a public-facing site, which you can all see, called My Starbucks Idea. Has anybody ever seen it or heard about it? A couple? What's really fascinating about My Starbucks Idea is that millions of coffee drinkers from all over the world can go onto this site and make suggestions to Starbucks for things that they want to improve with drinks, with their physical locations, with services, with music, with ambiance, with getting involved in the community. Anything that you want and can think of, these community members and these customers suggest to Starbucks. These customers then vote on these ideas to see which ones the most popular ones are. And then Starbucks as a company takes those most popular ideas that they know customers care about the most, and they implement them. But they implement them in a very transparent way. They tell customers where they are in the implementation process. Was the idea rejected? Are they implementing the idea? How is it going? Did the idea not work out after they implemented it? Why not? They will share this information with the customers. And so the customers know what Starbucks is working on, why they're working on it. Is change coming? What kind of change? Why aren't things changing? This level of transparency means that it's okay for your company to not be perfect. This level of transparency means that your organization can focus on the things that your employees care about the most. And this level of transparency is the cornerstone for designing these types of employee experiences at companies all around the world. Now, if there's one thing to take away from all of this, just one thing that organizations can do to start to focus on these employee experiences, it would be this. Think of your organization less like a factory and more like a laboratory. Factories are linear, they're process-centric. They maintain the status quo. It's about command and control and delegation. Laboratories are the exact opposite. They test, they experiment, they use data, they get feedback. They have people that provide training and encouragement and support. It's okay if you fail, you try again. If we can think of our organizations more like labs and less like factories, we will be able to design and create beautiful things for our employees. And I'll leave you on this note. Think about what organizations around the world would look like if we all spent more time focusing on employee experiences. Think about what your organization would look like if your company started focusing on employee experiences. And ask yourself, wouldn't you want to work at that type of an organization? Thank you.